Okay, it's almost 7 o'clock, so let's start it on time. So, good evening, everyone, and good morning and afternoon for to those joining us from other time zones. Welcome to the 34 AsiaGraphics webinar. I'm Jen Chao from Xiamen University, and it's my pleasure to host today's session. The AsiaGraphics webinar series provides a platform for researchers across Asia and beyond to share their latest work in computer graphics, visualization, and related fields. So, in each webinar features two distinguished speakers. And today we are honored to have Dr. Ai Chao Shen from the University of Tokyo and Dr. Takanori Fujiwara from the University of Arizona. So now let me first introduce our first speaker. Dr. Chao Shen is now an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science, the University of Tokyo. Dr. Shen received his PhD from National Taiwan University and previously worked as a doctoral and project assistant professor at the University of Tokyo. His research interests include computer graphics, machine learning, and visual computing. And today he will share his recent work in a talk titled Domain-Specific Visuals in the Generative Era, Front, Garment, and Layout. So let's welcome Dr. Shen.
Yeah, thank you, Jens, for the introduction. So yeah, let me try to share my screen. Yeah. Can you see my slide right now?
Yes, it's good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let me let me move some of the, I don't know. It seems like some of the zooms is like blocking my. Okay, yeah, I think that's yeah. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. So I will just get started. So hello everyone, my name is Ichao, and I'm from the University of Tokyo, and today I'm going to talk about its domain-specific visuals in a generative era. And specifically, I will focus on these three different domains like font, garment, and layout. So a brief, as Jen introduced, so I'm currently assistant professor at the University of Tokyo, and I graduated from National Taiwan University. I work most on computer graphics, and recent years we have more and more this data-driven approach that tackles some of the traditional computer graphics problem, like vector graphics or typography, font, sketch, and so on. And I also have an interest in garment and virtual try-on. So I will directly jump into the topic. So basically, the background over the recent years is that we are facing this rise of a very large generative model for image and video. For example, all this image or the right hand side is video. Oh, yeah, so this video is basically generated by VO3. So I think this is from Google, and it looks very, very nice. And with all this background and some of my other people that I know that maybe also saying like after they seeing all this new generative model, they are feel like, okay, yeah, maybe computer graphics is solved because yeah, all these models can generate a lot of high quality visual content that is basically for general purpose, right? So everyone is a lot of people using them to generate image and videos that you can post on social media. But I don't. So basically, I disagree with this part, and because even though these models can generate very high quality results, usually they are just very aesthetical pleasing. So basically, what this means is that all the content looks very nice. But if you consider about for those content that is mostly useful for some additional downstream tasks like design, for example, like a font or layout, they are the result of all this generation should be should be useful for some other further design or like garment. They need to generate a very specific types of, for example, connection in order for designer to really use them. And the challenge is that basically for image and video, all this general purpose content, we have a lot of data and we generate data every day. by some real human, so that all the data quality are pretty nice. But for all this domain-specific visual content, it's very difficult to obtain high quality data. So all this basically means that we don't have so many high quality training data that we can use to train the model. And also all these models, mostly what they trying to learn is just purely from a pixel information without the knowledge or the modeling to model the underlying data structure. So I want to share three different examples of the domain-specific visual content that we worked on in the last couple of years with all the help of the co-authors. So these three spec covers the font. So this the left one, and also try to generate in garment patterns by developing a domain-specific representation. And the last one is about like trying to make the auto-generated graphic design layout better, removing not all, but removing some of the common flaws by using a domain-specific post-processing method. So yeah, so I will start from the first one about this font. So traditionally, what we can do if we open, for example, Illustrator, PowerPoint, or Word, and then we are trying to say, okay, I want to have a new font. What we can do mostly, we just like open the drop-down list, and then try to select one of the font that looks similar to what we really want. But basically, like 95% of the font that we in this list is basically like we never used it before. And this is very painful process because we don't really know which one we really want. And yeah, and then we usually don't really know how to create a new one if all these things that don't really match our specific requirement. So in this case, that we trying to work on two different projects. So the first one is a font visual language model, and the second one is assistive tool. I will focus on the first one, but maybe show a small video on the second one. So this direction, the content is from our previous publication in AsiaGraphics 2024. So the paper is called Font Clip. So after checking this title, you will basically realize that basically what we are trying to construct is in a short introduction is basically a embedded space that have all this visual of the typography information and the language that describe it. So the issue of a previous work is that most of all the font, for example, retrieval or generation models and method, they usually do not support multilingual. That means they support different language. Most of them basically relying on training data that only for the Roman, which is basically English characters. And if you want to do this for multilingual setting, you need to acquire new training data. But this is usually very difficult, especially for example, CJK or like language that's type system that in many other places in the world. And usually for these models and method, they can only use for the scene attribute, which means that you need to include the attribute in the beginning of the training data. So you also need to collect the data to do this retrieval and generation. So we propose this font clip embedding space so that basically in this embedding space, the text that describe the word, that describe the typographic property will be closer to the similar font in the image space. For example, in this case, the strong font will be more closer to this stronger and thicker Chinese character, but farther from like the thin font. And also in this embedding space, we can also encode multilingual information so that we can do, for example, cross-lingual font retrieval and font optimization. And the key idea is pretty simple. So what we trying to establish is the typography visual language model. So I think a lot of people will probably know this visual language model concept. So in a very short term, is we're trying to embed the similar concept or similar concept in text and the image domain, and try to have them in the same embedding space. And the largest, most commonly used is a clip model. And then we observe that basically the clip basically don't really understand typography. So if we put all this A character but in different font, and then we're trying to plot the clip's embedding space, you'll see that when we try to visualize the more complex and italic font from left to the right, the clip embedding space basically fail to match this feature, because on the right hand side it should be a more complex or more italic, but it's basically quite the opposite. So our goal is trying to teach clip what is the typography, and in this case, what we use is a domain specific, in this case, a font specific data set, in trying to fine tune this clip embedding space. So this data set is provided and then is proposed by a previous 2004 secret paper published in 2014. And in this font data set, they collect human annotated attribute for each different font. For example, in this case, in some font, there will be like artistic and formal, and overall there are 31 attributes. And they ask a crowd worker to give a rating for different font in this different attribute. And what we did is basically we take all these attributes rating and grading, and then we render, given a font, we render image and then do the augmentation. And for the prompt part, we sample a couple of the attributes in this annotated attributes. So basically you can see that in this case, for the score that is above the 50, we will basically treat it as a positive attribute. And for the attribute that is lower than 50, we'll give it like a negative attribute. And then we sample this, and then we construct a prompt. And then we pair this data to fine-tune the clip text encoder and the clip image encoder. And surprisingly, after this, in these two examples, so the top example is the previous example of this complex italic font. We realized that after you fine-tune the embedding space using a domain-specific data, we realized that the font clip embedding space try to learn this concept, the typography concept, better than the original clip. And also in this Chinese character, it also learns these thin features. And this is the most surprising part, because the training data, the font attribute data is only in only contains Roman characters. That means that the clip embedding space the font clip embedding space learns also the typography features that can apply to different language. And then we use this embedding space, we extract a feature from this embedding space and perform cross-lingual font retrieval. So in this case, the query font is a font on the left-hand side. It's in a Roman character. And then we compare our result and retrieve from font clip and also from clip. And clearly we can see that for the retrieval results, that from the font clip matches the query font better. And then in the bottom part, we do this opposite. So in the query font, it's a Chinese character. and then we use it to retrieve a Roman font. And our font clip vector, embedding vector, still give us a better retrieve result. And also it can capture this typography feature called serif. So in this case, the query font have all the serif features. And without our font clip, the retrieve result do not have this feature. So all the results that retrieved using our font clip feature obtain this serif feature. So the next application that we trying to show is that we're trying to use this for a vector font optimization. And in font clip, there are two encoder. One is the image encoder. The second one is a text encoder. And basically, we can leverage these two to extract the features in font clip. So basically, what we're trying to do is that given an original font and all the control point around it, we're trying to perform optimization that align the features of the desired font even in image or in a text. For example, in this case, we're trying to optimize this italic and formal and legible font. What we can do is we input this to the text encoder and get a text feature of the font clip embedding space. Then we perform this optimization, iterative optimization, to update the control point of this font. And after that, we can rasterize it and put into the font clip image encoder and try to align them in the embedding space. And in this case, this text input becomes like, for example, if you have a font that you like, and then you can just capture it or crop it and then use it as a guidance. So let's see some examples. So in this case, we try to use this reference image. So these are the desired font. So they are more thin. And then this is the input letter. So our unknown, in this case, the optimization is trying to update the control point of this M characters. And after optimization, it's getting more and more thinner. And in this case, that in our paper, we're trying to demonstrate the ability of doing this, but we did not really add a lot of additional regularizer or like more constraint. So the result of this is still kind of suboptimal, but it shows the ability of this embedding space that can guide the optimization. In this case, it becomes a little bit italic. And this is another interesting result. I mentioned before, the serif feature is very important in typography. And in the left-hand side, we're trying to guide optimization to transform non-serif character into a serif character. And the right-hand side is opposite. We're trying to remove this serif from the input character. So to conclude this font clip thing is that we realized that by using a specific font attribute data set only in Roman character, we realized that by fine-tuning a clip model using this data set itself can already provide a very powerful new embedding space that can help us to do this multilingual, cross-lingual font retrieval and font optimization. And then, but with this, how can we leverage this to further help to design a new font? So a follow-up work that we did is trying to design a new design system that leverage this font clip embedding space. And this is a paper published in CLI 2025. So I won't go into detail of this part, but basically the idea is that usually when you want to design a font, you need to design all the character one by one. For Roman character, you probably only need to do this 26 times 2 plus 10 digits. but it's still very painful. If for CJK, it's even more painful. And then you need to use this specific software to do this one by one. And what we want to do is that take a font clip embedding space and some existing font generating model. And then we try to leverage a technique called interactive Bayesian optimization. So all this, I won't go into detail, but the idea is that we're trying to help the user to navigate the font generating model using Bayesian optimization. And at the same time, with the help of this font clip embedding space, we allow the user to provide, for example, some example image or some description that describe the desired font they want. So let's see a small video. So in the beginning, the user will choose a base font, and then it can try to explore this latent space of the generative model one by one, gradually to see which kind of font it want, or it can provide some description. And then we will find some latent space point to allow the user to explore. Yeah, and give me a second. And the idea is that because of we are exploring this latent space, after we design one single character, we can basically apply the design to all the other character. For example, in this case, you will see that you will update all the other character, and then you can go to some other character that you are not satisfied, and then try to explore the latent space again with the help of all this text or image input. And these are the fonts that designed by non-expert, basically other student in the lab or in the university. So yeah, so I think this is the conclusion of this font direction. So we propose this font clip and leverage it to design another assistive design system that enable the non-expert to design a new font. So next, I will switch to another domain that is focusing on the garment pattern. And then in this case, we design a new domain-specific representation to enable a better garment generation. And this is the content is based on it's from a paper that we published in this year's AsiaGraphics. The title is the garment image. So the background is that for swing pattern is a way to represent a garment. So the designer will design all this swing pattern, and then they fabricate it and then swing together and then put on like a mannequin or a real human. In design or 3D space, that after all this panel are stitched together, they can do it. They can put it to simulation to see the result. So the 2D swing pattern is a very important underlying representation for garment. And it consists of different panels, and each panel have a lot of edges, and all these edges can be stitched together like side by side or from front to back. And there are some previous work trying to work on this, or this image to pattern or prompt to pattern. But most of them basically represent all this swing pattern in a 2D vector representation. And a very simple way to understand some of previous work is that basically they trying to use this VAE or any other latest model to reconstruct this pattern. And what they kind of doing implicitly is that there's a specific, they kind of trying to classify what kind of pattern, what kind of garment is this, and then predicting the specific parameters inside. But this has some problem, is that the latent space it learned is very contains a lot of discontinuity. So for example, if we want to explore this latent space from this dress to this top to skirt, top plus skirt swim patterns, you see this in the middle, it will generate something very, very weird. So ideally, we want the overall garment to be separate into two parts gradually. But in this case, the latent space did not really learn how to do this. And also, if you don't have enough uh, variations, for example, in this case, the training data only have two different kind of topology, then it's basically impossible to learn like this top and skirt. Even though from our point of view, from a human point of view, we probably think that's kind of easy, but it's basically the model cannot generalize well to other different patterns. So what we trying to do is we're trying to tackle these two problems, and then we propose this Garmin image representation. So it's a kind of raster format of a certain pattern. And then we encode topology, geometry, and placement in multi-channel grids. And we also design this decode and encode process so that it can adapt and compatible to existing downstream tasks. And unlike some other previous work, well, basically similar, but in our case, there's that the input to the learning system and learning models is a Garmin image representation. The output of the learning model is also the Garmin image representation. And then combined with the encode and decode part, then we can connect all this together with all existing application. So a simple way to look at this is that most time, in the most simplest case, there will be two layers for modeling each garment. So there are a front layer and there will be a back layer. And in each grid of the garment image will contain both inside and outside flag, and also some edge types, and also there's a deformation matrix to model the local deformation. So we'll look at this one by one. So the inside and outside flag basically specify if a grid is covered by a certain pattern. And the edge type encode different kind of properties. For example, the blue one is a non-boundary, basically internal edges. And then if the outside boundary is not a stitch edge, it will be this yellow one. And there's another edge type called front to back stitch. So in this case, it means that the front part of this edge and the back part of this edge will be stitched together in the final result. And this side-by-side stitch means that there's a separate patch in the original swim pattern. And the deformation matrix is basically used to reconstruct the original pattern. And as I mentioned, that we also provide this automatic decoding code process to get the Garmin image from existing data and also decode the learning result. So let's first look at how we encode this existing swim pattern in vector format into the Garmin image format. So basically, we stitch them together and then try to rasterize, putting them in a grid. And the most important part is that after we put them into a grid and then get an edge type from the original swim pattern, then we're trying to fit the boundary to the original shape by computing the deformation. So we're basically solving this small optimization problem so that we can obtain the local deformation of each grid. And for the decode part, is trying to, after we got the Garmin image, for example, predict Garmin image, then we will use the edge type to segment it, and then we also can compute this reconstructed pattern by using the predicted deformation grid from the network, and then we can use it for a downstream task. And to deform the panel, we basically leverage the predicted deformation, local deformation, and fix a boundary and solve this deformation, a traditional deformation, to reconstruct the swim pattern. So we did some preliminary and small-scale experiment to demonstrate the ability of our Garmin image. So the first one is a VAE experiment. So we just try to demonstrate a smooth latent space. And the second one is an image to pattern experiment to show that our latent space the latent space learned by the model can generalize to unseen topology. So in this case, we train these two different VAEs and compare the smoothness of the layer latent space. So here we can see these two pattern on the two sides are the input. And then we're trying to explore the latent space in between. And we can see that for the VAE latent space of the vector format, in the middle it generates something very weird and then suddenly jump to something like, so the transition is not smooth. But in our case, you can see this scene gradually showing up here and then gradually like split it. And also in this case, you can see this scene like split gradually. And this is like a zoom-in view of these changes. So this demonstrates the smoothest transition of the latent space. And for the image to pattern experiment, the task is you provide an input image, and then we're trying to predict the swim patterns. Here we use this training data that have these three different kind of patterns, and then the test case is the pattern that's not really in these three different types, which is the unseen topology. And as we can see here, the ground truth is on the rightmost column. And for the previous work at Suformer, it basically predicts something very weird because the topology is basically not unseen before. And then for this case, it should be a skirt, but it looks like a pant. And in our case, most of the cases we successfully predict the right topology. But of course, the shape and the result is not as good as ground truth. At least it's kind of demonstrate that we can predict this unseen topology. Of course, there are some limitations. For example, the resolution is still a little bit low, so it's like a zigzag boundary. And some prediction error inside, which this part should be like a side by side. But in this case, we can fix some of this by doing some post-processing. So in this case, in this work, we propose this Garmin image raster format. And this achieve a smooth latent space and generalize to unseen topologies. And I think the important message or important discovery here is that if you have a good representation, sometimes you don't really need a very fancy or very complex, for example, generative model to generate something. But the important thing is how to encode all this domain-specific knowledge into this representation. And in the future, because right now we only model this two-layer thing, but there are more and more, for example, how can you need an additional layer? So the final final domain that I want to share is this graphic design layout. So basically, we want to rectify these common flaws by using a domain-specific post-processing. So this is a paper published in this year Pacific Graphics, and it's just like 2 weeks ago. So the background is that we see all this graphic design everywhere around. For example, poster, you read document magazine, or you take the subway, and then you will see all this advertisement. And the purpose is trying to organize all this visual content to convey certain message, even for advertisement or for example, magazine for different information. But you still need to maintain the readability and aesthetics. But usually it requires some professional designer to spend a lot of effort to do this to make a good layout. You also need to talk to other, for example, a stakeholder to understand their requirement. And then the recent development of the deep generative model, it makes this a little bit easier, so they can generate some layout in a very short time. You only need to provide a specific types of like number of element. But the problem is that it's not perfect. So all these different models, they will generate, for example, misalignment or undesired overlap or containment, unsatisfied containment. And some problems because most of the existing methods, what they want to do, not all of them, but most of them, what they want to do is that they want to match the distribution of the training data. And then usually they also need a final decoding process. And this process usually is not differentiable. So which makes it very difficult to encode specific constraint penalty into the learning process. So what our goal is that we want to avoid, no, but we want to eliminate this process and the problem by proposing a new method, which is the optimization-based method, to remove some of these flaws and then improve the quality of the layout of the auto-generated layout. And this is basically training free, so it's like a pure optimization-based method. So even all it didn't really depends on which model you use to generate a layout. But basically, what we think is that removing all these flaws is not enough. We also need to preserve some the layout similarity of the original input layout, which basically means that we want to minimize the deviation from the input layout after the optimization. So in this case, this layout only contains two very minor misalignment. And some previous work basically will destruct or basically destroy all the structures, and then but also did not really remove the flaws. But in our case, we basically remove all these two small flaws, but also preserve the structure pretty well. So I will simply introduce our work about this layout rectifier, how we do it. So given an input layout, we want to get a result layout that looks very similar to input layout, but without most of the flaws. And we propose this rectification optimization, which contains this two-step. So the first step, we will try to remove misalignment. The second step, we will try to remove this overlap or improve some containment we want, and do this iteratively. And basically, yeah, and sorry. And then we propose to use a concept called a grid system, which is a very common common concept used in many designer. And also we propose a new box containment function to remove overlapping. So I think I will not really, oh, sorry. Give me a second, sorry. Can you still see my screen? Yeah, so I will not go into detail for all of this, but the idea is that the grid system is a very important concept to use to enforce the alignment for real world designers. And we try to leverage this concept. So for each of the layout, we will pair it with a reference grid system, and then try to improve the alignment using this grid system. Sorry, I'll skip all of this.
Sorry, Dawson, I
Oh,
can't see your screen. Can you
oh,
share it
sorry,
again?
sorry. Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, give me a second. Uh, sorry. Yeah, it's Can you see it right now?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So basically, we have this two-stage optimization. In the first stage, we're trying to use the grid system, trying to improve the alignment. And then in the second stage, we're trying to optimize, we're trying to avoid overlapping or trying to improve some desired containment. So I will skip most of the details, but basically we designed this new positive containment function that can allow positive containment like the one on the right. And also we propose this negative containment function that can try to avoid this overlapping at the same, in a very similar formulation. And in the previous work, most of the method is trying to avoid this overlapping only. And then we just iteratively perform this two-stage for most of the like 5 iterations. And then some of the result is that, for example, in this case, it's a document layout. And then by providing this input layout, our results resolve this overlapping, undesired overlapping, and improve some of the alignment here. But we still preserve the structure. For other similar method, learning-based, or this basically use a prompt, GPT to perform this task, it basically destroy the structure or did not really resolve the problem, the common flaws. In this magazine layout, this blue element by design or by the definition of this layout, magazine layout, it should be contained to the image. And then our method successfully remove all the desired overlapping of this headline and also include this into the image. And we also perform this different quantitative evaluation. And then most of our method, the post-processing method, can help to improve the layout generated by different generative models. I will just skip this. So of course, there are still some limitations that because if you have a lot of elements, then it becomes like this trade-off, like how to really improve them to keep their like element property, like a size and then aspect ratio. But if you also want to reduce some black space for certain element, for certain design task, then there's a trade-off between these. And then I think this is mostly leave to designer to design to their design priorities. So what the interesting of this work is that we basically propose this specific post-processing method that can work with many different existing and future layout generation models. And then this can help us to get a better result out of all these different generative models. And yeah, to conclude my talk, so before the conclusion, so a little bit self advertisement. So we have a Secret Asia paper this year to do this auto sketch. So we're trying to do this vector sketch completion that have this style alignment, and then we trying to leverage the VLM to understanding the difference, the style difference between sketches, and trying to propose to write some style adjustment code program to adjust a different style. So if you are going to attend Secret Asia, please take a look. And our first author, Xiaoyuan, will present the work. So the conclusion is, I think, yeah, we saw a lot of all these generative models and large foundation model proposed. And then I think this kind of brings a lot of different possibility for computer graphics researchers because we understand a lot of different kind of domain knowledge well. And then we can borrow some of the knowledge learned by all these models and combine our domain knowledge. And I think that's one very important future direction, as I mentioned in here. So yeah, again, I think there's still a very exciting moment, and I think there are more and more problems to solve because we can kind of like step upon all this knowledge learned by these models and then trying to improve them of some of all this visual domain specific visual content. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, let's conclude my talk, and I'm very happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shen. We now take a short moment for questions. I see there are many questions in Bilibili, and I will pick several here. And the one is, I think the first one is about garment image. So the audience is asking, so does the a grid size or a grid resolution limits the designs in the final pattern?
Yeah, so I think right now our goal in this work is just trying to demonstrate the possibility of like encoding this kind of like pattern into this raster grid. And then I think it is also possible to raise the resolution. So I think we just use a very low resolution, like 16 by 16. And I think this is because there are so many channels, there's basically a lot of channels. And then
Mm-hmm.
in order to make the learning more visible, I think it's that like a trade-off because basically I remember we can still increase the resolution. But right now we choose to do this just trying to reduce the computational requirement. But I do think that yeah, right now if you only have this low resolution, I think we try to it can encode most of the pattern that proposed in some of the previous work. But of course, there is some limit. Is the This is a limitation, and but at the same time, increasing it is basically possible. So I would say that it's just it's not a very big issue right now, I think.
Okay. Thank you. It's a clear explanation. So, the second one is let me try to translate it.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
no, sorry.
So
Yeah.
do you think about extend the garment image to like 3D version, like design clothes with voxels directly on 3D,
Mhm.
body? Yeah, is that possible? And
Yeah,
is that the difficulty?
I think it is definitely possible. So you can consider, for example, this you can have this voxel grid, right? And then you can basically do this like in multi-layer, and then you can encode different information in this grid. And I think it's like I do feel like in Garmin or in this Garmin representation, so I think a lot of people working on, for example, you have a 3D mesh or 3D representation of this Garmin, and also a lot of people working on, for example, this 2D patterns. And I think a 2D pattern is just more, in my opinion, is closer to the real uh, Garmin design process. But at the same time, I do see value that a lot of people working on this 3D mesh representation as well. So I do believe it is possible, and yeah, it's worth trying, but we just don't have time to try it yet.
Okay. Okay. There's also another question about the garment image. So he's asking, so what are the difficulties for the government image model being applied in real world fashion design or manufacturing workflows?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, is to be honest, I don't really see a big challenge because so I mean, of course, the we need to test, for example, more higher resolution, and I think also the current automatic encoding and decoding part, the successful rate is very high, but still there are some cases is that very challenging to do this. So in order to scale all this up, these different part has to be, for example, we need to spend more time to make the quality better. And also, I think right now, as I mentioned, the limitation, so we can still only handle so some more difficult design, for example, this pocket hood or some different specific design that some of them we can model it, but it's difficult to automatically encode them and decode them right now. So I think these are like most of the like the pre-processing or this automatic way. But the core learning thing, I think is not. I don't really see very big challenge about that because as long as we can convert from existing data or we can directly convert it from Garmin image to the existing swim pattern representation, then the downstream task can be, for example, combined without any problem, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you again,
Yeah.
Dr. Shen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
Due to
problem.
time
Thanks for the
constraints,
question.
we have to
Okay.
stop the Q&A here.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
again, Dr.
Thank
Shen.
you.
Yeah. And thanks audience for your questions. Okay, now let's move to our second talk. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Takanari Fujiwara from the University of Arizona. Dr. Fujiwara is an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science, where he co-directs the Data Representation Lab. His research focuses on visual analytics and data visualization and machine learning, particularly developing interactive and multimodal systems for analysis in high-dimensional data. His works have been published in top venues such as IEEE, TVCG, and so on, and have received multiple best paper honorable mentions. So today, Dr. Fujiwara will give us a talk titled Complex Data Through 3D Data Representation. Let's welcome, Dr. Fujiwara, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. I want to share my screen first. Give me a second. Can you see my screen and the slide title?
Yes.
Okay, then I will start. Yeah. Good morning and good evening, everyone. So today I will be talking about the communicating complex data through 3D data representation. And this is overview of today's my talk. So first, I'd like to share my research vision of my co-directing research lab, DLab, since this vision is very fundamental to describe why I'm developing various data representations, including 3D ones I present today. And then I will share two concrete topics I'm working on currently. One is immersive planetarium scale visualization, and another one is interactive data physicalization. So I just started a new faculty member position at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Arizona. And then another new faculty member, Dr. Sandra Bay, and I co-started directing the Data Representation Laboratory, or DLab, DLab Lab in short. And then as an ultimate vision of this DLab Lab, we envision a future where the boundary between humans and data disappears. So in this world, data is no longer something to stack on a flat screen, but something lived, felt, and experienced. And we also strive to the point where we can clearly and confidently see data patterns existing in high-dimensional space without hesitations or doubts. So we seek to move beyond the traditional visualization workflow, where the user's data and tasks are fragmented, but instead we are moving towards a space where data and humans coexist as one. So while envisioning this future, we see there is a boundary or barrier between data and human, as data is too abstract for humans in general, and in that situation, we humans are very far away from the data. But introducing data representation can bridge abstract data and humans, bring them closer together. And here data representation is how raw data takes form, whether as a 2D visualization chart or 3D model, a physical object, and so on. And then, so we think data representation can be further decomposed in two parts. One is features, another one is artifacts. And then we label each process to connect this data and humans, this process as process, build, and evaluate. And we extensively research each of these steps. So more specifically, the first step process converts a complex data set to a set of features, which is a more digestible form for humans, also the next build step. And then for this process, we develop various new computational algorithms for complex high-dimensional data sets, such as dimensional reduction, tensor decomposition, network representation learning methods. And then the build step transforms features to artifacts, such as interactive visualizations, to bridge the gap between humans and data. And in this step, we consider various forms and modalities. For example, in addition to traditional 2D visualization, we research 3D visualization, immersive visualization, and physicalization. Physicalization is a physical representation of data as analogous to visualization. And then lastly, we also study how human interacts and experience data through artifacts by investing how they perceive and engage with data. But today's talk, I will not cover the evaluation work much and focus on the process and build steps. And within our work, today's talk showcases 3D representations. So I should first explain why we should consider 3D representations. So first, 3D representations have strong potential benefits for analysis. It is because 2D space is often insufficient to capture structures of complex high-dimensional data. For example, in this 2D dimensional reduction result of RNA sequence data obtained by applying UMAP, UMAP is also one famous dimensional reduction method. And here we can see various line-like shapes, but those are separated in multiple pieces here. But actually, most of these line-like shapes should maintain the continuous trajectories based on scientific facts. So in fact, if we use 3D space, we can maintain the continuous structural properties. And then, yeah, actually scientists who analyze this data set commented in their paper, 3D version of UMAP results is more ideal for them. And similar issues happen when analyzing network data. For example, when using a 2D space, this kind of link intersections are often inevitable. But as noted by various scientists, in real world physical networks, such as neurons in brain, link intersections at the edge crossing should not happen. And if we can use this kind of 3D space, we can easily satisfy such structural constraints. And second, 3D representations have potentials to provide intuitive and enjoyable interactions. For example, based on Fan et al.'s study on network visualizations, when compared with traditional flat display environments, 3D visualizations and immersive environments such as VR, AR can provide higher embodiment interactions. And in their study, because of this high embodiment, users show better task performance when analysis requires many interactions. In addition, we can even further employ data physicalization, which can even provide higher embodiment than AR/VR. And another potential benefits are for learning. So a few existing studies suggest 3D models and tangible interfaces can increase learning motivations because of learned subjects and so on. And so, of course, we need more studies to conclude all these general benefits, but I think 3D representations potentially can contribute to advanced aspects of analysis, interaction, and learning. So far I explained the DREP's vision, which aims to provide better communications between data and humans by introducing effective data representations, and discuss why we should consider 3D representations. Now, I'd like to showcase 3D representations we have developed. The first one is representative. First one is a cosmic view of life on Earth, which is an immersive planetarium scale 3D visualization of biological data. Then I want to mention this is an international collaboration work among University of Basel in Switzerland, Linköping University in Sweden, University of Arizona, and Rockefeller University, and the American Museum of Natural History. So I'd like to explain the motivation of this work first. So as you know, planetariums provide extremely large-scale 3D immersive environments. And also they are installed in various science museums as shown here. For example, Dome Theater located near from the Linköping University, the Hayden Planetarium at the AMNH, American Museum of Natural History. And then these planetariums so far are mainly used for presenting astronomical findings to public. And then the planetarium's high immersion environments helps public understand complex scientific findings or concepts. So we are interested in utilizing the same strengths to convey complex biological concepts. And in addition, planetariums are very powerful environments to gather scientists and then share their knowledge to develop attractive shows and so on. And by opening opportunities to use planetarium environments for not only astronomers, but for biologists, computer sciences, we aim to foster interdisciplinary communications within biology field or even across other fields. So in this project, with our team members from the bioinformatics field, we aim to generate a presentation of DNA sequence similarities of species, which are very abstract data. And then at the beginning of this project, as you can see here, we tested various different 3D designs. But eventually, we noticed that we can utilize semantic similarities of astronomical objects and biological elements as one way to facilitate understanding of the abstract biological data. So what I mean is, so both astronomical and then biological data sets share the hierarchical nature. So here I want to show this video to convey this idea. There should be a sound. Let me know if there is no sound. Let me play this video.
Astronomers and planetariums use the OpenSpace software to explore data from the mountains on Mars to the most distant objects we can see billions of light years away. We see here the nested structures of the universe. Planets huddled around stars, stars that belong to galaxies, and the large-scale structure formed by groupings of galaxies. OpenSpace can seamlessly traverse this range of scales, all while maintaining a visual continuity.
Okay, so as noted in this video, astronomical objects can be organized in a hierarchical manner, starting from the Earth, solar system, Milky Way galaxy, even to the groups of galaxies. So similarly, the biological categorization also uses a hierarchical structure, starting from species, genus, family to class, kingdom, even domain. And so this project, Cosmic View of Life on Earth, introduces 3D representations that convey this biological hierarchy while using analogies to the hierarchical organization of astronomical objects. So first, I'd like to provide a quick overview of our visualization pipeline, and then after that, I want to show a demonstration video. So our system uses both DNA barcodes and phylogenetic trees to extract biological similarities of species and higher taxonomic levels such as families. So we decided to use these different sources to consider genetic saturations when comparing very different species. But yeah, today's talk, you don't need to understand this type of details related to bioinformatics knowledge. But then after that, we apply a spherical dimensional reduction method, which we newly developed for this project. And then we arrange these multiple 3D spherical points in a hierarchical manner and then where we place a sphere into a sphere to embed a hierarchical organization. Then we render these 3D points using an astronomical software, OpenSpace. And then because of the high flexibility of OpenSpace, we can even input various useful information for biological comparisons, such as pictures, CT scans, 3D models, even sounds. Now I'd like to show our current outcome.
For biological data, we show three major kingdoms of multicellular life: plants, animals, and fungi. The so-called tree of life reveals the underlying evolution of biological groups. In this arrangement, the last common ancestor of these three groups is located at the center of the sphere, and the expanding tree represents the evolution of life out to present day. Each point on the sphere is a biological class, such as mammals, birds, fish, or insects. Let's first visit the birds. We use a nested structure to examine the finer scales of biological diversity. Here, the birds are plotted on a sphere where large family points are surrounded by their smaller species points. We can add any sort of imagery to these data to highlight various scientific phenomena. We also label points for each family and the species within that family. Here we see the thrushes in yellow and a two-species family of African rockfowl, Picathardidae, in green. Derived from DNA sequence data and arranged using dimensionality reduction algorithms, species with similar DNA sequences are arranged closer together. We can draw a tree diagram from a recently published paper that connects families. Removing the species allows us to examine the tree more clearly. By integrating different levels of detail using dimensionality reduction, we can show biological groups and species on multiple scales. We move from birds to mammals, where we plot its families and species in a similar manner. We include a variety of skulls among the green primate points. In OpenSpace, we can localize these in one place to compare and contrast them. We see one of these skulls has a pronounced ridge along its top. This is the gorilla, who possesses strong muscles that connect the jaws to the top of its skull. Similarly, we examine a variety of insects plotted among their biological order points. We can scale the insect models so they are sized accurately relative to one another. We can also examine them in more detail. Here we fade down the body of the cricket so we can view the complex respiratory system within the cricket. The distributed nature of these air-filled tubes begin at openings in the exoskeleton and circulate air throughout its body.
Okay. So now I also want to show one result our team's members made. Here we try to incorporate sounds. Then still we are in a progress of integrating this work to our current visualization. But I believe this video still can convey a general sense of how we can utilize sounds to achieve a further immersive data exploration and provide context behind the abstract data. So now I'd like to explain one technical contribution about spherical representation. So first, we decided to use this spherical representation because it can make a nested sphere organization and has a high affinity to hierarchical exploration. In addition, spherical representation makes easy to see points from both outside and inside the sphere. And then in the astronomical context, this is interestingly corresponding to looking from the outside from the planet. Looking from the outside will correspond to the looking at the planet from space. And the another one is looking at the stars from the ground. So, but we originally tried to utilize existing spherical multi-dimensional scaling algorithm, but as you can see here, it generated two character visualizations, and it was not suitable for data exploration communication for our purpose. So to solve this cluttering issue, we extended a decluttering method developed by Leib et al. And their method can preserve neighborhood relationships while decluttering points. So this type of decluttering is achieved by using sector-based transformations. And then as shown in this top example, we can easily control the decluttering strength by adjusting the number of iterations for decluttering. And then bottom figure shows what happens at each iteration. So the method separates a region surrounding each point in a fixed number of sectors, in this case 4, and moves a point to less cluttered area. And then naturally this idea can extend to a spherical surface by generating sectors on a sphere, as illustrated in this example. So here I show two examples where we apply weak and strong relaxations respectively. And as you can see, even after the relaxations, spherical representations preserve neighbor relationships, but utilize wider space to show points more clearly. And I'd like to summarize this part of my talk. So we proposed a concept of cosmic view of life on Earth and designed a planetarium scale 3D visualization to present complex biological data in a hierarchical manner. And then this project is still ongoing, and we believe this is a long-term project. And then as one activity, we have been starting demonstrating our presentations to a wider biological community. For example, as shown here, we provided a presentation to over 150 attendees of the vertebrate genomes project meetings and started to discuss how we can integrate their new and the precise sequence dataset into a planetarium visualization. Okay, now my talk shifts towards 3D printed interactive data physicalization, which is related to these two recent publications where I collaborated with human-computer interactions and visualization researchers in Linköping University, UNC Chapel Hill, and CU Boulder. So in the first publication, we focused on physical networks, where nodes may have fixed positions and links may have particular thickness and so on. So these attributes convey semantics of physical systems in the real world, like food-fly brains, plant networks, and vascular networks. And then this physicality as a dimension that 2D network visualization cannot capture, such as no link intersection constraints in a brain network of neurons. Then other researchers have developed algorithms to help convey this physicality and also came up with novel representations like this 3D printed network. But when I look at such a network, it's still ultimately static. So but the research highlights how interactions are critical for working with data. They help people build mental models as they explore a data set by looking into critical details. But how do we enable interactivity even to static objects? And what would that look like? So this project focuses on achieving selection for complex geometry like this network. Selection is the most fundamental interactions. Once selection is implemented, we can start to allow other interactions included from selections. But achieving selection for the physical world, even with relatively small network, is not straightforward. So human-computer interaction and computer graphics researchers have tried to make selection possible on physical objects by using techniques like capacitive sensing. As you may know, capacitive sensing is commonly used to recognize our touch when we are interacting with our smartphones or tablets. But as you can see here, current solution needs a lot of wires. And then these wires becomes problematic as they require a lot of effort in post hoc instrumentation and make it too difficult to handle complex shapes. So in fact, here is our earlier prototype where we were trying to support selection with only 2 nodes, but you can already see the complexity of wiring. And imagine like trying to follow this approach for 20 nodes, even higher, bigger network. So you can see the traditional off-the-shelf electronics solution is not easy to apply to complex geometry like these networks. So we started to explore other non-electronic solutions like computer visions, but computer vision itself introduced other challenges like occlusion and inaccurate alignment and requiring users to stay in a frame. So we tried to provide more efficient, straightforward solution here. So we propose to think about form and interactivity concurrently. So what if we could readily fabricate objects with inborn interaction? So the 2 prior approaches I showed in previous slides focus on enabling functionality after the artifact was created and requires ad hoc instrumentations. So our idea is to leverage what computation can offer. So we can concurrently design the form and the interactivity by using optimization, simulation, and advanced algorithms together. So our approach can directly embed electronics into the given network geometry. So here's what I mean. If we all have X-ray vision, you would see black serpentine patterns routed throughout the links. Then these serpentine trace patterns are computationally generated and printed with conductive filaments. So essentially, we are making them act as registers. Now we can support capacitive sensing with a minimum of single wire. So as a result, these networks act as touch sensors, and we can use these touch sensor to develop some interactive visualization with other desktop applications and so on. So here we implemented a computational design pipeline, and with this pipeline, a network dataset can be automatically converted to a 3D object that directly embeds the conductive traces I showed earlier. We can have a fully functional object that is ready to go as soon as it is done printing. So in fact, all user need to do is upload the network dataset and wire it to a microcontroller. And all the low-level engineering is automated. So now I will be discussing the technical steps on how we achieve these sensing networks, which should achieve these 3 sub-goals. So one is how to identify touch nodes, and how to lay out 3D networks, and how to generate files required for publication. So first sub-goal of identifying touch nodes can be achieved through optimization of the resistance embedded in each link. So a conductive trace that is more densely packed will have more electric resistance. And then this will also make a capacitor take more time to get charged when we touch node. So this time delay is known as RC delay. And then to uniquely identify each node, we can uniquely vary the length of each conductive trace to obtain unique RC delay values. Here's an example of varying RC delay in practice. We obtain unique RC delay values for each node if we apply our optimization. So, and here's an example graph that visualizes these different RC delay values. Here, X represents time and Y-axis represents RC delay values. So each color represents a different nodes. So you can see distinct signal for each touch node. So we need to vary the length of conductive traces within the network, but this requires two considerations. One is which link should have conductive traces, and another one is their resistance value. So to solve this optimization, to solve this kind of challenges, we convert a given network dataset to an electrical circuit. So in our implementation, we employ a path finding algorithm such as depth first search to find the optimal path that connects all nodes with the fewest number of branches. And after the optimal path has been determined, we use a circuit simulator to figure out what the optical resistance should be to ensure unique RC delay values. I will not talk detail, but with circuit simulators, we designed a gradient-based optimization to find the optimal resistance to clearly recognize the different touch points. Here, the optimization goal is to maximize the minimum difference among the time delays when touching different nodes to ensure time difference for all touch points. Then once we have computed the optimization values, we can generate the conductive traces such that their geometry matches their aimed resistance value. Then now I will move on to the second sub-goal, layout optimization. We consider both functionality and aesthetics here. So as a functionality, we first of all, we must avoid intersect links with resistors to avoid messing up those, the electrical circuit functionality. And then also, as we focus on physical networks, there can be a positional constraint as well. Therefore, aesthetics, this is optional, but we can avoid intersections of all links and also make link lengths as uniform as possible. And as you can see here, satisfying these all constraints, objectivity is not that easy. So we utilize neural networks to conveniently find solutions. And then as a final goal, we need to generate fabrication files that satisfy all optimized outcomes. So for this sub-goal, we utilize PyVista 3D visualization Python library to generate the fabrication information we want to use for 3D printing. And then these files are used to prepare for 3D printing. And this is CAD files look like in a 3D printing software called PluSlicer. After 3D printing, the last step is just to connect this printed one to microcontroller. And then, but at this point, you may be wondering why not simply use AR or VR headset to achieve similar goals. So first, this sensing network can be interactive interface for various environments, including AR, VR. Here, in a video, the one user interacts with sensing network, and then another individual wearing the AR glasses and watch her interactions in real time. So I want to say that rather than pitting the two technologies against each other, I see how physical interfaces can rather complement existing AR/VR devices. For For example, there are non-psychophysical benefits of haptics as opposed to solely relying on mid-air gestures. So research highlights how haptics can provide better performance for analytical tasks, information recall enhancement, and even reducing the cognitive load. And then now we implemented sensing networks. But obviously, networks are just one form of data representations. So as a second work, we want to support other forms of representations like these objects. But networks are very powerful representations, and we realize that any free-form objects can be modeled as a network. So taking this insight, we extend the previous computation pipeline to support a wider range of geometry. So this extended pipeline enables users to define where the touch point should be by selecting on different areas of surface. And then after defining touch point in the 3D model, we apply the similar principles of generating conductive traces that will be routed throughout the model. Then here is what we were able to achieve through this extension. We can now support a variety of geometry from the simple geometry like boxes and spheres, also like more complex shapes like a Hilbert curve. And you can see printed examples here and sensing examples as well. Okay. Now I'd like to summarize this part of my talk. Through the use of 3D printing and computational techniques, we introduced a novel fabrication pipeline that considers form and interactivity concurrently. By using this pipeline, we design interactive physical networks and other shapes. But now we are working on supporting more touch points, applying to this idea to analyze high-dimensional data, such as showing dimensional reduction results, and evaluating with users more comprehensively. And finally, I'd like to summarize today's talk. First, I share the DREP's research visions and two 3D data representations. One is planetarium scale 3D visualization and interactive data physicalization. And with these new forms of data representations, we can start expanding our capacities for communicating and engaging with complex data. And lastly, I'd like to thank all my collaborators and sponsors of my work. And thank you for listening to my talk, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Fujiwara. Yeah, we take several minutes for Q&A. Yeah, I see the several questions, and I will pick some. Yeah, the first one I think it's about interactive 3D printed data physicalization, and
Yes.
He's trying to ask him, is there any other application fields except education? So can you
Okay,
about more
sure.
about it?
So
Yeah.
one example is like, of course, education, but as you can see, the using 3D represents sometimes more interactive, more like intuitive interactive device. So for example, one example we are considering right now is when you are sitting down the planetarium, controlling planetarium like environment that's not easy because 3D space. But if we have, for example, sphere like some interface, we can start to manage the planetarium visualization much easier. We expect like that. So that is one example. For example, we can start to utilize as a interaction device. The another one is because still the scale is very limited, 20 nodes. But you can imagine once we can start to support 1,000 nodes, somewhat the ultimate case, but 1,000 nodes, 10,000 nodes, then basically physicalization start to act like data visualization basically. So we can start to analyze large scale data as well. But that one we need still lot of works to achieve that situation.
Okay. Okay. Another question is, um, how do you justify the new 3D data representation method is better? It's better than the traditional ones. So
Yeah, so I think,
yeah.
yeah, so like actually, as I mentioned, actually, that is still ongoing work. We need to do more. But, like, of course, one example, the user study, we still didn't do it, by the way. So, for example, we can start to do user study, basically compare, ask users to perform a simple task, for example, finding paths from this network, point node A to node C, and then see the, accuracy, how fast they can solve, and then what was their preference, which interaction method is better, and so on. Yeah, and then also we can do more, the qualitative analysis as well. Yeah, just looking at the results, and then we can start to see patterns only in 3D space, for example. Yeah, that is my answer.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And the last question is about cosmic view of life on Earth, and he's asking is in large-scale visualization projects. So how to strike a balance between the scientific accuracy and the visual presentation?
Yeah, so that is actually a good point. So as you can see, even in this like a project, we had such discussion. Originally we apply normal dimensional reduction methods and also existing spherical multi-dimensional scaling, and then how can I say, numerically, probably applying just existing spherical MDS is probably more precise. But we eventually decided to more, declutter the points because of we want to show like more points clearly. Otherwise, for example, as you can see here, those bad pictures are cluttered in one specific areas. So I mean, then like how we decide this level, like how much we want to precise, how much we want to, I can say, more focus on presentation. There's no very clear answer, really clear answer. So basically, in this project, we discuss with those bioinformatics scientists whether this much of decluttering is acceptable or not. So yeah, really depends on the situation. We just need to communicate with like those users or presenters what they want to convey.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost 8:30. Yeah. I think we have to stop the Q&A here. And thank you very much, Dr. Fujiwara, for
Thank you very
sharing
much.
your insightful work and for us today. Yeah. I think that's the end of our 34th AsiaGraphics webinar. Yeah, and I would like to seriously thank both of our speakers today and for the sharing their very excellent talks. Yeah, and of course, thank you all to our online participants for joining us. Yeah, I think a recording will be available later on the YouTube or Bilibili. Yeah, and also please stay tuned for our next webinar. It's coming up in December. All right. Thank you all again and have a great day or evening, whatever you are. Okay. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye.